So now we have another video for you today, and it's about the generations of anime. We have Anime's been around for a long time, right? You know, as long as cartoons have been around in America, anime's been around in Japan, right? They had their little you know cartoons which were anime, and they're not my cup of tea, but other people know what I know too. Um, and they may have watched episodes. Doraemon was probably one that you could probably think of. That one's been around for a while. And then there's some other ones too that have been around for a long time. Like I'm talking about before my parents were born type shit. Um, and maybe even my grandparents too. But you got those animes. We'll call that the like infancy of anime, because like that shit didn't go over here. Like it didn't come over here and like impact America and like other places that much. Now, when we get into the golden era of anime, that's when that shit really took off, right? Because we have what in the 80s, 70s, 80s, we have Gundam Wing. So Gundam is kind of like Transformers, right? I think it actually precedes Transformers, like before Transformers. There was Gundam, because Gundam came out in the 70s, like 1970. Then you have Lupin the Third, that also came out during the golden age of anime, and I like me some Lupin the Third, and I'm actually gonna watch those Lupin, those older Lupin episodes, you know, later this year probably, in my time passing through places and shit, right? But I also know that Saint Seiya and Dragon Ball Z came out in the 80s too, and that's the golden age of anime. Why? Because it spread across the world. People in America started knowing about shit like that, talking about it. People started wearing shit, Goku's this, Goku's that. But it really got rampant in the 90s. This is the OG anime era, right? When people talk about OG animes, they talk about these animes, right? They talk about Rurouni Kenshin, they talk about Sailor Moon, they talk about Dragon Ball Z, they talk about Yu Yu Hakusho, those kind of animes. Of those ones, I didn't see Sailor Moon, females like that one a lot. But I try to watch it from time to time. I just stop and then come back to it. Um, and that's the 90s. We call that OG anime, right? That shit came out before I was born, but when I was born, because I was born in the 90s, right? I was born in the end of the 90s. That's when Hunter x Hunter got its first adaptation in the 1999, and also One Piece got its adaptation in 1999. So then going into the 2000s, those animes actually come in and they take over. Well, maybe not Hunter x Hunter, but One Piece does. That's one that comes in and it just like does really well, you know. But what else comes in the 2000s? This is called the Big Three era, like during the 2000s, early 2000s. Inuyasha comes in. It kind of still follows that kind of like 90s vibe though, and it does. Watch Inuyasha and you know what I mean. It still has that little like 90s OG anime. So if you put that in the OG anime category, I don't hate you. You actually right. But definitely One Piece and Dragon Ball still doing this thing. It comes back with Dragon Ball Z Kai and all this other shit, right? You know, we got, but that happens later actually. We have Naruto and Bleach coming in, and that's the big three: One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach. And it came out like that: One Piece, Naruto, and then Bleach. And people, kids like me, caught wind of this shit when we were growing up. Yeah, I saw Naruto first. One Piece had a flop earlier on, right when it came to America. It had a 4 kids dub. That's why it turned people away from it. People just forgot about it and said, "Oh no, One Piece is that because of that." But Funimation got a hold of it at some point, and then it actually took off. But I found it a little bit later. Like I was 12 when I found One Piece, but I was like really young. I was like 8 when I found Naruto. I think 8 or 7, something like that. Naruto then Bleach was the last one to, come over. And it stayed on Toonami for a long time. Out of those two of the big three, Bleach was on Toonami all the time and shit. Every time I turned on, in the weekend when I was, growing up, Bleach was on. Bleach was on, Bleach was on. Naruto would sometimes be on if they scheduled it. One Piece was hardly ever on there. But it came on there too sometimes. Um, but then we get towards, the mid generation. So the mid generation, that is like the late 2000s. So 2009, that was, Fairy Tale came out. And it's part of that mid generation. Not quite a new gen, but not quite a, big three generation either. But it was being talked about with the big three, during like 2009, 2010, 2011. And it was. But then, took a break. I guess people took a break from it and they never came back. But I stuck with it. We have other ones like Attack on Titan came out during that time. Even One Punch Man. Um, we got SAO that came out during this time. And this mid generation kind of like opens up doors for like, other people. Like, there's other kinds of animes, there's isekais, there's, those kind of I guess like post-apocalyptic kind of animes like AOT or whatever. We got damn, there's all these snails out here. But um, we have those animes coming in from like 2009 to like we'll say about 2015 ish. But if you wanted to put One Punch Man in the new gens, it kind of follows that formula. But what really considers it a new gen is and when they start coming up really more prevalently is in 2015, 2016 when My Hero came out. My Hero came out, and that's when the new gen anime started to come about. So what is new gen? They focused more on what? Not having too many filler episodes. They might have like anime only scenes inside of an episode that has more canonized material, but that makes sense when you're converting something from manga material and adapting it into anime material. It's not going to be one to one, it just won't. But it's more like that, or they try to, but they censor things and other things, right? Because if you read the manga, you know what I mean. Um, they get the cores now, so like 12 episodes to like 14 episodes, maybe 15 episodes is one core. That's like a season sometimes, or it's a part one, season one or season two, or whatever. And then they have 25 episodes maybe. That'll be two cores, 25 to 28 episodes for like a two-core series. My Hero followed that formula. Season one, it followed the one core thing, but then after they got going, they just went like 20, 25 episodes for each season, and until they got to the final season, right, which came out last year, and that was just one core, right? That was only 11 episodes though, right? Because like the way they adapt on the manga material, they put more chapters in an episode, man. Before that, they weren't doing that. They weren't doing that shit too much in the earlier generations. They make filler episodes. These episodes were like had nothing to do with the manga or anime material. They would just be like Naruto's cooking in the kitchen with somebody, or shit like that. Weird ass episodes that that wasn't a part of the like manga story and other things, right? And there was a lot of that before the new gen came in and did that. So that's why people like new gen animes. And for me, what I want to see moving forward, because new gen started in like 2016 and basically onwards now, right? But I want to see, more of these older animes or animes that had like ended before they adapted like all the manga to come back, like Magi, right? Magi's a good example of an anime that had been adapted but didn't adapt all of its manga. I wanted to adapt all of its manga. It was getting good after Magnolia Top, right? Judar and Hakuri were just walking and they were like looking down at the aftermath. They were about to go do some shit. I want to see what happens, right? You gotta read the manga and see what happens, right? But then we could get an anime adaptation of, from where it last ended. We could also get something like Yu Yu Hakusho getting a reboot. Why I say this? Because Rurouni Kenshin got one, and that one came out in '96. The first adaptation came out in '96. Yu Yu Hakusho came out in '93, but it gets a reboot soon. Then after it gets rebooted, that basically means new anime style. We could probably make that whole like new rebooted Yu Yu Hakusho series just 50 episodes. The way that the new gen formula is with all these cores, you can get like season one done with like one core, and then the Dark Tournament might have to be like two cores, like 24 episodes. The first season can be like 12 episodes. Second season 24 episodes, maybe 22 episodes. You know, one core for season 3 and one core for season 4. And that's what I would do. And then after that, bring Hunter x Hunter back from where it last left off in 2011 with that adaptation. And that's where I would like to see anime go moving forward. And then we can still adapt all these newer mangas and shit that's coming out. Like Kagurabachi is going to come out, in the future at some point. You better believe that. There's other mangas that people talk about, but they'll get anime adaptations. And you can keep people like me who like the like older, OG and big three era kind of animes, on to anime. Keep us watching anime longer by redoing some of them with better animation stuff. And that's just something for people to think about. One day it might happen. But be cool, call in the corner, and that was another video I made for y'all today.